So chapter 4, we're going to start looking at how we use accounts in the chart of accounts, how we create one and maintain one. We're also in later lessons in chapter 4 going to be looking at how we keep track of each individual account's balance. And so we've been using a chart of accounts in our Cengage lessons. Where the transactions are, there's that little tab that says COA, and I've been showing you guys that, how you go in there and you can copy and paste the account titles to your journal. And so that is a chart of accounts, and that's where we're going in this chapter. How do we create those? How do we maintain them? So an account form. This is what we call an account form. We're going to call it a ledger form when we get into one of the other lessons. We give it a name, but for now we're going to call it an account form. And it is a place where we keep track of the balance for every individual account. So when we were using T accounts and we moved into journals, I made the comment that we could do everything in T accounts, but then it's really hard to know what your balance is from day to day and that kind of stuff. So this form is going to allow us to keep track of every transaction to a particular account, like cash, and what the balance is in that account after every single transaction. So let me relate this to the T account. So to start out with, this is our form. This account right up here where it says account, that's where the account name is going to be. So if this was cash, it would say cash. If it was accounts receivable, ABC Company, it would say accounts receivable, ABC Company. And then every account has a number, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Then you have these two accounts, the debit account, or the debit column, and the credit column. Those kind of refer to our T account. So I made you a little red T there. So as we were doing T accounts, the left side of the T account is a debit. The right side of the T account is a credit. So it's basically the same thing. We just have the names up here. Then we keep a balance running over here so that after every transaction, you know what the current balance is of the account. So again, I made your little T account to show that those are your balance columns. So for instance, if this was a credit or a debit to cash, you would have the debit amount here and the debit amount here. If it was the second transaction, let's say you had a $500 debit balance and you were crediting cash for $100, 500 minus 100 would be 400, and that would be the balance over there. And we'll go through that a little bit more later on in depth, but that's what the form is for, is keeping those balances after every transaction. So here's an example of a chart of accounts. The chart of accounts has a specific format that we want them written in. You'll notice that we have them divided by a T with balance sheet accounts and income statement accounts. Now we'll get into what that really means later in like chapter 6. Balance sheet accounts are going to be accounts that keep our accounting equation in balance. Income statement accounts are going to be accounts that tell us whether we made a profit or not. So the first set of balance sheet accounts are assets. Assets, liabilities, and owner's equity tell us that the accounting equation is in balance. So our first section is assets. Then we have liabilities. Then we have owner's equity. So just like our accounting equation, assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. These accounts tell us that that accounting equation is in balance. Then over here, we have revenue. Revenue is money coming in. Expenses is money going out. So these accounts tell us whether we have a net income or a profit. So a group of accounts is called a ledger. This is a new vocabulary word for you. So it's just a group of accounts. We call that a ledger. The ledger that contains all of the accounts we've talked about so far, we call a general ledger. Means it's just the general list of accounts that we're going to use for our business. The name given to an account is called an account title. Cash is an account title. Prepaid insurance is an account title. And then every account has an account number. So as we're looking at our chart of accounts, we give each account a number. So for instance, all of these assets that are listed under assets, and we've got a 100 for them. They're the first section of our chart of accounts, so they all start with a 1. The first number is the general ledger division. That's our 100. All assets start with a 1. Then the second one is the location within the ledger. When we number accounts, we number them by tens. So notice we have 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160. That is because when you start a business and you give your chart of accounts, as you're in business for a while, you may decide that you need to add an account somewhere. And so we want to leave enough numbers in between each of those current accounts so that if we add additional accounts, we can put numbers in between them. So the procedure for arranging accounts in a general ledger is called file maintenance. So in this we have 2 accounts that are existing up here. Miscellaneous expense, supplies expense, 560, 570. I'll get into how you know what order they go in just a minute. Sometimes you have to add those new accounts in between. So if we were going to add one in between miscellaneous and supplies, postage expense is a new account, we would give it the 565 in between the 2. And then if you wanted to add one at the end, like water expense, it would be a 580, the next 10 down. So this one is 65 because it comes between 560 and 570. This one's 80 because it comes after. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but most of your sections of your account, chart of accounts, are going to go alphabetically. That's why we go M, P, S, W. P comes between M and S, so it had to go in between. W comes after S, so it came at the end. So when you're going to open a new ledger form, that's what this is, and open that account, you simply do it by writing the name of the account next to the word account and the account title. And that opens up your account for you. So you have to do that for a different form for every account in your chart of accounts.